tongue is just a bit to handle. I only speak in geometric forward sharp angles. Run with nappy-headed scientists in silk mantles. 45 on that square and beat it.
Yo, what's going on?
Not a thing.
How you doing?
I'm not sure what happened before I popped in here, but it sounded like something funny.
No, you know, it was that when she said no when the thing went off.
I was doing too much at one time. I was trying to start the recording because I heard the beep when you came in. So I was like, oh shit, let me go ahead and record. And then, but I was already recording. So it stopped the recording and I had to, it was just too much. And me and her don't get along anyway, so.
Word. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Oh my goodness, I'm so happy you came. I'm gonna tell you, I heard of you when I first got it like heavy into the like conjure community on Facebook, and people were always praising Daizy October. Daisy, just everything Daisy. Then when I got, and not every, you know what I mean, just hear your name often. I got the Witches Brew is the very best Facebook group for women of color who are coming into this knowledge and this study, because it's all pieces. And I don't know what kind of juju you put on that group, but everybody stays everybody stays in line. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you don't have that.
Wow.
It's nice. It's very nice. I just got into it a little while ago, but I really enjoy it. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. You know, I ain't really put no juju into it. It came up. It just came up out of this thing. Somebody hit me up on Instagram. A black witch named Krina hit me up on Instagram asking if I want to collaborate with her on doing some sort of like group witch ritual to kind of bring in, you know, the energies of healing and things like that. And I was like, all right, let's do it. So what we did was like a 5-day ritual where we would go live in an event page, and, you know, sisters could join in and share what they were doing. Very simple stuff just to, introduce ritual work to an online community that was waiting for it. I was interested in, like, okay, you know, I see y'all with these altars and these candles and stuff, but what are you actually doing? Like, how does this actually work? So we did some very simple sigil rituals, and, you know, it was cool. You know, a lot more people responded than I expected. And I was like, okay, now that these 5 days are done, what do we do? You know, what can we do to continue the energy and kind of create a container for this energy to keep going? And that's when the Witches Brew was created. I named it the Witches Brew, Indigenous Rituals and Magic, because specifically I wanted to work with women, or, you know, not even just women, but especially witches that identified as Black or having African descendancy, because there was little to no spaces for us from what I could see on Facebook. So yeah, it was just a little something simple that started off with like 12 people, and then day by day started growing, and, you know, more and more dope, beautiful, amazing sisters started joining the group and having these really empowered conversations. And I'm just proud to be able to be a facilitator of that energy, because it's really the juju of the group. You know, the ladies came in and put their own juju on it, and I'm just watching like, this is amazing. People talking about some really dope stuff. So thank y'all. Thank you for being a part. I love y'all. I appreciate everything you're doing. First of all, the Nine Minds radio show. What? You know, you want to talk about service to the conjure community. This is a big service to the conjure community, because, you know, you're, like I've told Rish, y'all are historians. You know, you are documenting what is happening within Black metaphysics.
Yeah.
Right.
In a world, in a society that has been built off of suppressing Black metaphysics.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I'm just in honor, in awe. I love y'all.
Oh, thank you. It's such an amazing time in history. It's such a powerful time because I don't remember anybody calling themselves a witch. When I first started, I got into African things, and if you wanted to do that, you either went with a book or you had to join an African traditional religion or a diaspora and traditional religion. And you didn't have anything if you were out by yourself. You had to get a book and wing it. And that's pretty much all you had. You had to join a group and be under them. And this is so exciting. It's every sister I meet she done found her magic and working it. And it's like, I can't believe it. I didn't think I would live to see this. How did you get started? Did you learn from your parents and your family, or how did you get started on your spiritual journey?
Well, I spend a lot of time trying to figure out where exactly it started. Where the hell did this all come from? Why am I like this? And a lot of people have stories of just, being a kid asleep at night, and one night an apparition appears at the foot of the bed and points to them and says, you the one, and they wake up and wake up with superpowers the next day and shit like that. I never really had that experience, I've always been just, there's always been kind of a subconscious attraction and, appreciation for, what is called oftentimes the occult, or, knowledge that is hidden. And, my parents, my mother grew up, Southern Baptist. She's from LA. And, her mother's from Mississippi. So we had a lot of the superstitions from Mississippi. You sleep in the room, don't sweep nobody's feet. And if you do sweep somebody's feet, they gotta spit on the broom so that, it doesn't take away the potential for them to get married. You get your feet brushed, you don't get married or some shit. I always thought that was like, okay, where does this come from? It's kind of weird, but so we had a lot of superstitions mixed with an appreciation for Jesus. My grandmother loves her Jesus. She's the usher. She put us on the usher board when I was little. I was baptized very young. But I always was more interested in the things we weren't learning in church. Like, my mother's a Pisces, right? And my sister is a Pisces. My mother's a double Pisces. Her sun and moon is in Pisces, and my sister is a double Scorpio. So I grew up in a household with these two very kind of naturally tuned in energies. My mom, she's been just, really, really, really psychic her entire life, and just always really interested in like synchronicities and noticing symbols and signs. And my sister's telepathic. She can hear you when you're thinking, and she'll tell you, I just heard what you thought right now, and she'll tell you what you thought. So we didn't really have context for what was going on from what we were learning from Christianity, but I knew I liked that. You know what I mean? I knew I liked that aspect of it. So, I remember being interested in astrology because of that, very young, 3 and 4 years old, going around asking people what their signs are, telling people what my sign is, blah, blah, blah. And although we were Christian, there was a slight metaphysical undertone to the family. The first time I ever saw tarot cards was from the local down the street hood witch who came over and gave my sister a tarot reading. And, she's telling my sister about the pregnancy she was going to have in the next couple of years, which she did. She was busting out all kinds of information from the cards. And I remember being so enthralled that I was sitting at the table staring at the cards, like listening to everything this woman said. And although I had to pee, I just could not remove myself from the table. So I ended up pissing on myself while I'm sitting here watching this card reading happen because I was so enthralled. And, ever from then, it just stuck with me even throughout, being in church, hearing preachers, being involved in church. I was never interested, I always had a lackadaisical feeling towards white Jesus. It just never worked out. He was always a cartoon character in my head. So I had to go through the motions, you know. I had to, like, he literally was a cartoon. Like, Jesus painted, you know, the painting of white Jesus. I never saw him as an actual living, breathing person. He was always a cartoon character. And I was like, okay, you know, I get it, but nah, you know, I can't declare that this person is my Lord and personal Savior, because I don't know who this is, and he don't look like me. He don't look like any of my family, you know. So I was just intuitively repelled, but I never let on. You know, I went to church, you know, things, you know, great, you know, usher board and choir, all that. But later in my teen years is when I really started breaking away and getting into more esoteric knowledge. I started reading tarot cards for myself. I started studying occult sciences, like especially in relation to like Wicca and white European sciences. So, you know, I was like, okay, this is interesting, but I still have the same issue. They're talking about, you know, it's not about white Jesus anymore. It's the horned goddess and the Lord and the lady. And I'm like, you know, in this book, they're still white people.
Right.
They're still white. So I don't, you know, as much as I appreciate, herbs, okay, you know, sigils and symbols and things and onyx, it was still, the leaders were still white, you know, and the circles around me were still white. So I just kind of practiced some solitary stuff. You know, fast forward to 10 years later, when you realize that everything that they were doing has African origins,
right,
and that has been suppressed, you know, I was like, okay, this is for me. I've been this person my entire life, so I need to start doing more research and get serious about this spiritual awakening. Yep. So there's no one day this all happened. I just always been metaphysically inclined and allowed myself the space to research. You know, I had to hide it. Mind you, I had a secret drawer full of candles and and knives and all kinds, you know, the cups and chalices and crystals and things like that. And my mom did find it, and she threw it away. But that, you know, that didn't stop. I just couldn't stop it.
I have a quick question. Like, how do you feel, or are you initiated in any particular ATR or path, or are you interested in that? Because I have this an internal battle back and forth with the idea of initiation, because what I feel like is important to me is uncovering initiating into the traditions of what we had here in the United States prior to the routine outlaw anti-hoodoo legislation initiatives, murdering our people for practicing, outlawing the drums. There were things that we were not allowed to do. Well, there were anti-legislation laws in the Caribbean as well, but we ratios of Europeans to Africans here, because there were not as many of us to each European as there were in, say, the islands or in Brazil. It was easier to know how we practiced here. And so you have a lot of us who are returning to the ways of our ancestors, the ways of our grandmothers. We want to go sit at the feet of these elders, and our families even, and learn from them, like, how did you make it through? And, you know, some of us are not interested necessarily in initiating outside of America. We want to initiate into the ways of our grandmothers right here. And so how do you get someone who's kind of taking that kind of mindset and say, you know what, I have nothing but respect and gratitude to my ancestors who came through the Middle Passage, but I understand that the same way that the Cubans respect Santeria and Palo, and the same way that the Haitians respect Voodoo, and the same way that the Puerto Ricans respect 21 Divisiones or Sanse, like, Can't we do the same thing right with conjure, with root work, with the same way they understand how their ancestors poisoned slave masters in order to get free? We did the same thing right here. How do we learn? How do we even bring those ancestors up into almost like not Orisha status, but you know what I mean? Like bring those names up into the status of what we see in these other nations where they praise their ancestors so much. We seem to be disconnected from that, and we want to run everywhere else, everybody else. How do we cultivate, you know what I'm saying. You know where I'm
going. Yeah. Wow, that's a very, very beautiful perspective you have. It's very well rounded. Yeah, if the question is if root work in, I'm going to say, you know, the American South is a viable tradition worthy of kind of initiating into, the answer is it doesn't matter because people are doing it anyway. You know, it is African spirituality manifested on this part of the planet, and you know it's carrying the tenets of all African spiritual systems. When you look through, you know, whether it's Ifa, whether it is Candomblé, Santeria, you know, any of the Bantu spiritual systems, there are similarities. There are pillars of similarities between all of them. Yes, they definitely have different traditions, different initiation practices, different, you know, deities and names of deities. A lot of them are very similar, like as we know. But overall, the pillars is how I look at them are the same. You know, number one, you see yourself as God and part of God. You know, you see yourself as a manifestation. God is not inaccessible to you, and you don't have to spend your life pining to appease a jealous God. You know, all African spiritual systems recognize ourselves as part of the nature continuum, of part of the continuum of the original one. And, you know, the only birth destiny you have is to manifest yourself fully. You know, manifest what the Yoruba call Ri, you know, manifest yourself and your connection to God. And if you do that, you don't have a problem. That's like, how is that not hoodoo? You know, that's definitely root work. You recognize the God inside of you because you are doing workings. If you did not recognize your ability and your power as a manifestation of deity, then you wouldn't do any magical work because it wouldn't work. You don't have the power to do that. Only God has the power to do that, you know. So root work, you know, see yourself as God, part of God. Ritual is another similarity between all of the traditions, being able to manipulate or affect the electromagnetic frequencies around you to draw to you or away from you what's necessary for your Ori to manifest itself. Ritual. You know, there is not one traditional African spiritual system that does not have ritual or a collection of thousands of rituals to do to work with spirit to make things happen or stop things from happening. You know, hoodoo is in that. Ancestor communication. Come on. You know what I mean? The ability to connect with the inner forces of the self, you know, ancestor communication and spiritual incantation, being able to call on deities, call on the ancestors for assistance and guidance. That's there. Divination, all around the board. That's there. The transmission of knowledge to the next generation, you know, making yourself responsible for sharing what you know to the next generation, you know. That's been a little bit suppressed out here, you know, in specifically the U.S. because there was so many initiatives to stop African traditionality from manifesting itself in the next generation, and replacing it with, you know, Christianity or Catholicism, and you know, it even got kind of funky to where, the only people who got the next generation of information were white people, and they started selling it back to us. So, yeah, that's part of what needs to be fixed, you know, and that's why I'm really proud of what y'all are doing here. You are making sure the transmission of specifically root work and conjure work gets passed down to the next generation. And I've been back and forth in my mind about initiation too. For me, I live in California. I was born and raised Los Angeles, LA girl all the way. Well, let me not say that. Not like LA, but definitely I love my sunshine. I love my beach. You know, I love having access to the woods right down the street from the mountains, right down the street from the desert, right down the street from the ocean, you know. But out here in California, like the, you know, African spiritual community, I wouldn't say necessarily is popping. There's a lot more going on in Oakland, because Oakland's amazing. But in LA, you know, there might be one Ifa temple, and the one time I went to a bata or something they were having, it felt like I was in church all over again. You know, it was a lot of contrived personalities, and they weren't black. So, nah, you know, I've had my actual physical barriers against initiating. But that has made me really consider, you know, what is it that I want to initiate for? You know, what is it that I want to initiate into a traditional system for? Okay, it's so that I can help realign myself with my natural self. And, you know, you don't necessarily need an initiation or a piece of paper or what's it called? You know, any tokens that say you're doing that. You know, I feel like I've been initiating myself into African metaphysics for a very long time, even without knowing it. I was doing it subconsciously, you know, just by being who I was. And I'm all here for African people, black people in the South, the elders coming forth with the knowledge so that the people who do feel connected to root work have a, you know, somewhat of a structure and elders to help guide us in the process. It's a beautiful, absolutely powerful spiritual system, and I do recognize it as such.
Yeah. I think that's the move now, because I've heard several different people, you know, Risha has always said that. And then I found, you know, Iolosa Akalatunde, she was saying she got training from this man called the Matahuchi, and he was developing that. And then I found another man who was saying, no, our Orishas are our ancestors, our leaders that free us and different things like that. I keep hearing that theme over and over. Sounds like people want to develop here fully. I even read a book back in the 90s, I think. It was about jazz, and he was calling the loa. He was saying the different forms of music, that's part of our loa, that's our expression. And you can play that and move somebody and change their energy and stuff like that. And we created that right here. And it's like, it's so powerful. And I didn't think about it, because in the early days, I was just thinking, well, you're going back to Africa, so you need to go to them in order to go forward. And it was helpful. But I think even if you did that, you're not done until you develop here. And I think that's where it was going, and I didn't see it until now. You know, the things that Risha has been saying and these other people that have been saying that, I think that's the end result. Even if you went to Africa or you went to Cuba to kind of get yourself started, you know, to remind yourself of who you are, I think the main thing is to restart it here. You know what I mean? I think that's really the direction that we go into. You know, because all the young people I see, they're working with crystals. And I noticed you had a blog that said, are crystals even for black people? And I'm telling you, that's what I was thinking, because I was like, that's some hippie white people stuff. And then when I saw all that with it, then I was like, now, okay, I'm getting it too. So next thing you know, I was getting it. But I didn't see that first. You know, everything's changing so fast. And the word witch, everything's changing so fast. So tell me how you got into crystals deeply, and tell us a couple of things about crystals and why they matter to us. You know, why they should matter to us.
For sure. Well, you know, crystals, my attraction to crystals started very young too. You know, I got a bad story about how I first came into my first crystal. I was in like third grade, and, you know, I was going to this public school, and, you know, 2 days out of the week we got like an extracurricular. So, you know, we'd spend every day, all day with our teacher, but 2 days out of the week we might go to music, and then we might go to like extracurricular science class. Extracurricular science class came up, and we were in a section where we were talking about igneous rocks and sedimentary rocks, and, you know, how rocks are formed in lava, and, you know, how they're really powerful, and some of them are, you know, how strong some of them are, and how much, you know, they used to make radios out of quartz and things like that. And at the end of the session, they brought out these trays of crystals. You know, they had like an obsidian, a tourmaline, a quartz in there. And as soon as he brought out this tray of crystals, he brought one to each like individual group of kids that were in the class. We were broken up into like 5 groups. He brought that tray to our table, and I seen that quartz crystal, and I just could not move. I could not think. And when everybody had turned around to look at the teacher, I took that quartz crystal, put it in my pocket. The bell rang. The bell rang, and I went home, and I put that on my dresser. And I went outside, and I took some dirt. I don't know what I was doing. I took some dirt, and I put it in a bowl, and I put that crystal on top of the bowl. And like for the next week, for whatever reason, I would go in and I would wash off the crystal and replace it back in the dirt and wash it off, and, you know, every day. It was a ritual that I had made for myself from this stolen crystal. And, you know, ever since then, I've just always been interested in crystals. Crystals, quartz, I would say, was my first love. I always say quartz is my first love. And, you know, as I got older, I started seeing how, you know, the metaphysical community would recognize crystals as a tool for spiritual development somehow. And, you know, I was like, shit, they're pretty and they're for spiritual development. You know, let's work with this. Let's see what this does. And, you know, I started getting into meditating with the stones, and, you know, recently making crystal grids and things like that. You know, having something from the earth that is in its like pure structural form is very powerful. You know, you can feel the stability in a lot of these stones because their atomic structures are set up in a very specific and very solid way. You know, us, we're always changing, right? We got blood. We're essentially bone, skin, and liquid, you know, tissue, liquid, and bone. So the liquid helps to transmit all of these electromagnetic frequencies we have. And, you know, we have a heartbeat, we have a pulse, and, you know, we're always kind of fluid and moving around, wiggling. Crystals are very, very solid.
Yeah.
You know, if you shine some light through it, it's not going to change the atomic structure of the crystal, but it's going to change the light. The crystal is going to change the light. You know what I mean? So you working with crystals are a way to realign yourself with Earth, the vibrational energies of Earth. And luckily for Earth, you know, luckily for us, Earth is amazing. Mama Earth is beautiful and brilliant. She makes all of these amazing looking, amazing feeling stones with these powerful atomic structures that, you know, when we need to realign ourselves, we can by just being next to these energies, by connecting to these little, they're kind of like, you know, a lot of New Age metaphysicians will call them like people, little entities, you know, my crystal people, your crystal people. And, you know, although I find that somewhat corny, I do recognize the living energy inside of these stones. You know, they do have a vibration, and they amplify the energy around them, especially quartz. Quartz is in our cell phones and our computers. It's in our TVs and in our watches because of its ability to hold light information and re-emit that in beat, do, impulse. They figured out ways to make 3-inch or 2-inch by 2-inch hard drives out of quartz that can hold more information than a 3 terabyte hard drive can. So there's a lot of magic and mystery inside of what Earth pushes up from the inside of herself, and I have a respect for that. And one of the most powerful spiritual transformations I can remember happening as an adult was when I started working with yoni eggs, using crystals inside my body. Things just started exponentiating after that. Started seeing lots of patterns in myself change and feeling my energy body shift, because working with crystals, they affect you on a very subtle level sometimes. Unless you're sensitive, you may not even know what a crystal feels like when it's working. But the more silence you can bring yourself, the more sensual awareness, closing your eyes and going inside your body, you can feel your chakras and you can feel how the stones affect your chakras. Just like you can feel somebody who has a warm body temperature and they put their hand up close to your face. You know what I mean? You can feel the warmth. It's just the same thing. Just like you can feel somebody's vibration if they're having a bad or good day. You sit next to them, you can feel that shit. So the crystals are medicine for vibration to me. And African people knew that. African people been knowing that. That's what the article that you're talking about, are crystals even for black people. Man, some people saw that title and tripped the fuck out. But of course, they didn't. All kinds of comments. What do you mean? Crystals are for everybody. Everybody deserves, I'm just like, read the article, man. Read the article. I know. Read the article. Crystals are for everybody, and especially for us because we were the first to start using them. So, on the article, there's I separate the different regions of Africa and the crystals that come from those regions of Africa and how those people from those regions use those crystals in jewelry. The crystals to adorn their body. Gold and silver, too, minerals from the earth. These are precious minerals from the earth, and, it ain't nothing new. Ain't nothing new for us.
I had a girl, she was asking how, she was like, I don't feel anything. Like, everybody's ranting and raving about stones and crystals, but I have it and I don't feel anything. Like, it's not doing anything for me. And so I asked her, or I gave her my experience. I said, you don't feel it doing anything to you or for you. You feel yourself changing as a result of having it on your person.
Yes.
If you know yourself, if you like you said, how you go inside yourself and you can feel the subtle bodies shifting, you can feel changes happening inside you. You can even feel when the energy, let's say you have a rose quartz or a clear quartz, and you've been stressed out, bogged down with all this negative energy, and you just feel the weight lifted up off of you over a course of time, and you just think, oh, I'm just at peace now. Like, no, nigga, the peace. Yeah, it was too, but also the result of the energy of what's around you. The same way people can affect your energy, people, like you said, are living, breathing entities. These crystals are minerals. This is a part of who you are. The crystal has a lot of the same properties and chemical makeup as your bone, any solid part of your body. So it's going to have an influence on you.
Yeah.
Having people access it from that perspective. Like, you're not just going to, just did something to you. No, it happens over time. You have to pay attention to yourself, your habits, the way you think, and you'll start to know habits changing. So
right, absolutely, that's brilliant advice. Absolutely, you got to pay attention to yourself, and you have to work one-on-one with the stone. Like, you have to, you know, we kind of have in this Western world that pill for every ill, you know, mentality. You know, I'm hurting. You know, there's a lot of questions like, what stones are good for when you break up with somebody? You know, instead of, you know, ooh, I'm hurting right now. You know what I mean? What are some spiritual practices that I can do to uplift myself? So, you know, I call it, pill for every ill and stone for every moan. You know, every groan somebody got, they want, you know, want a crystal for it. But the more active you are in participation with the stone, and the more aware of yourself you are, like you said, Rish, it works. It works for you.
Now, I want to switch gears just a little bit, and kind of, it's something a little bit more serious, because there seems to be a lot of dissension and division amongst the Black witch community, and that's something that we saw, I think, with I mean, it's patterns. You see the patterns where you have a lot of women who, we look at the world and we take all of the high sciences that we've learned and we eliminate the reality of what's going on around us, right? We don't pay attention to or even acknowledge racism, white supremacy as an issue, because we're talking about clearing our chakras and aligning all of our systems, and, you know, we're not thinking anymore about how we're not really thinking about the practical application of the knowledge. We're not really focusing on how we're using this to change reality, not to escape reality. And what you see a lot of, too, on the inverse, is a lot of Europeans who come into a certain level of knowledge and wisdom, and again, there's no application of it in a practical way. They just know things now, you know. And when you get into these different groups, it's laced with racism, just all up and through, all these like derogatory comments, and then it's like levels to it on both sides, because you have like the white hoodoo community who doesn't even acknowledge that they stole all that shit from Black people. They don't even call it an African or even African American system. I don't even like the word African American, but they don't even refer to it as African or Native. They say, oh, this is American folk magic. Like, oh, this is a combination of Europeans and African influence.
Oh, no.
She said, no.
It's just a total ignorance and a conscious ignorance across the board of, we're not going to focus on or look at facts, history, reality, the current systems that we're really dealing with on a physical level that's really killing our people left and right every day. We just going to be, you know, I'm going to reach the natal cards and that's what I'm going to do. You know, so can you address that? Maybe like how we can kind of root ourselves in reality and still work on ascending into these higher realms that we all just want to be in all the time. Not me, but I know a lot of us, you know, we just want to be there all the time, and that's not, you know, we are on Earth.
Yeah, you know, I don't necessarily see being on a higher level being synonymous with not acknowledging racism. You know what I mean? Like working from your higher chakras. You know, that's not working with racism. You know, if your higher chakras are in point, you'll be able to see racism from a mile away and know exactly what to do about it, you know. So, and be able to acknowledge it from all different perspectives. So, you know, there has been a concerted effort in this country since we got here to pacify, to make docile the Black rebellious spirit. And that happened through religion, that happened through, you know, usurping our religion and implanting or superimposing white religion on top of that, because right religion teaches you to be a servant, to be a good servant to your master, the Lord, right? So if your new Lord is now a white man, and everything in the Bible comes from him, and he is the gatekeeper for your salvation, then you aren't going to have anything bad to say about him. In fact, you're going to be hostile when somebody else does. So that's by design, this whole, love and light, don't be angry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's, I remember I watched this, oh my God, in like the 70s and the 80s, there was this whole like self-actualization movement that was coming around through the new age white community. And it was about expressing your anger radically. Just laying down in a room and screaming, I'm so angry. My mom didn't love me. My dad was at work so much, he never cared about me. Screaming until you found your spiritual center, which was the ultimate purpose of doing that. Your self-actualization was that you are inside actually nothing. Your nothingness, and you don't have to worry about anything. Yet, they have this whole movement of white people screaming out their anger. But if I make a comment or a Facebook status about, my experience in a metaphysical event and, being snubbed for mentioning African spirituality, I get a whole slew of people jumping on me like, it's not like that, you have to change your vibration. You have to work on, all these metaphysical things and, basically being told to be quiet about race, how I feel about racism, because that was not the way to eternal enlightenment. So, we have, what do you mean? You have people in the room screaming out their hearts and all of the damages to their white privilege, but I can't say something about an actual living, breathing, moving negative force that is killing my people on a daily basis and has been ever since the initiation of our feet on this continent, so, there is a lot of silencing campaigns, and you have to be aware. You do have to be aware of when somebody's telling you to be more love and light, and really it means be more kind to white,
Yeah.
And
I can't people. I just do it. I can't do it. That's it. But I can't. I go into the groups, and if I see too many, because I've already, brothers and sisters done told me what they go through in these groups. So it's like, if I go there and I have to hear too much crap, it's going to be a problem. So let me just not do it.
Absolutely. It's triggering.
Oh my God. It's more than that. Like, it was one group, and I've joined several, mostly white or even mixed groups, because you have a lot of black people who and people of color who will cater to that Eurocentric kind of white mind when it comes to our shit. And it was one group in particular where I actually got a lot of support because this girl made a post, and I'll never miss the opportunity to comment on those posts when because they do it on purpose. Oh, I got cursed out because I'm white and I'm initiated, and they said white people shouldn't be initiated, and da-da-da-da. And so I'm like, I spit my shit. Like, we know how y'all do. Y'all been getting down the same way since the get down, and we can't have it. We can't keep anything for our own communities. You come in, you take it, you label it something else, and then you repackage it, repurpose it, and sell it back to us. That's the story. And so hopefully you won't do it this time, even though you've done it already. But now that you're coming more into other ATRs outside of the United States, then, maybe they won't let you do it the way that you did us, the way that you do everything, that you do right here on the soil. You've done it with our music, you've done it with our dance, you've done it with everything. So maybe you won't do it this time around. And so, I had people come on and validate that, and I didn't need it, but I just wanted to say it. But they came on and they were like, I really understand your perspective. That's why I'm hesitant, because I'm white. Or one woman who calls herself multi-ethnic. I'm multi-ethnic, and that's why I won't, get initiated, because I don't want to step on any toes or hurt any feelings. And I'm like, that's noble of you But what I said was, this is what you do. Like, maybe not you, but this is what the people will do. And so after I said it, and then I didn't say anything else, you had a white, a European, a white male, Hungan, or I guess he was a Babalawo, or whatever he was a priest. Mm-hmm. And he comes on and he's like, maybe we should listen, and we should do less talking and more listening so we can understand. And so after he said that, you had a whole slew of black people, because that's right.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what? I'm out of here. So even though they all agree with me for the most part, they still came back with their white shit. Like, yeah, I'm glad I listened to it. I read this, but, you know, it is for everybody, and I'm still gonna, you know, wear my LKs, and I'm gonna do this. And I'm like, okay, I'm out. I don't want to.
Arisha don't see color.
Arisha don't see color. Yeah, you know, they making up all these rules. All these new inclusive rules that I ain't never heard of. But
I've story of that Mama Ruth told us about what Zora Neale Hurston did with this High John the Conqueror. You remember?
Yeah, I was just about to say that. She started telling white people to wear John the Conqueror root because she knew they was bringing a curse to themselves.
Oh, damn. That's root working. Tell me that ain't root working. Tell me that is not working roots.
I can't really be mad because I feel like they bringing curses on their own generations when they do that. So
yeah, you know, I have been fired from white metaphysical jobs for telling people on my own personal Instagram to not be talking to me and telling me what I need to do as far as African spiritual tradition if you're not an African practitioner of African spiritual tradition. You know, yeah, you know, on my personal Instagram, they looked at my page, saw me tell this woman who came up on my page, she had been, you know, I post things occasionally, and a couple of the things I post will be, you know, a little information about the Orisha, and she liked to pop in every time I was talking about the Orisha and correct something. Like, I remember I did this, you know, little cute, just, you know, interesting little photo shoot where I took pictures of myself manifested as Oshun, Yemaya, and Oya. You know, I had 3 pictures in my phone already, and I was looking at them back to back like, oh, shit, you know, this is me manifesting the Orisha through my own little personal photo shoot. So I shared them, and she came up on the post like, well, you know, this is the popular 3 that everybody does, but you forgot Oba. And I was like, bitch, who is you? Who are you? Go away. I never invited you here, you know, but I didn't tell her anything. I just deleted her comment and just kept it pushing, you know, and then, you know, it'd be here and there another little, like a emoji with a, you know, suspect face and things like that. I was like, who is this? You know? And one time I posted something, honoring the ancestors, and she posted like Maserefune Gun, you know, which you know, is a symbol or a word of praise and honor to the ancestors. And, you know, I just had to figure out who this is. I was like, are you, you know, I go to her page and she has all these pictures and she paints African Orisha images. And I'm like, are you a black-owned business? And she said, no. I was like, I commented back. I said, do not come on my page using traditional African language to honor, you know, traditional African ancestors if you're not a practitioner, if you're not an African practitioner of traditional African religion. I got fired for that. Mm-hmm. I got fired from a Hollywood, like, reading studio, you know. There's these, that happens a lot in LA. There's a lot of white metaphysician businesses out here. And the company that fired me, the owners are they're supposed to be women of color, 2 queer women of color. who supposedly practice traditional African spirituality. You know, they're practitioners of Ifa. And they, you know, when she interviewed me and accepted me for the job, she was like, "Oh my God, come see my altar." And I went to see her altar. There's black dolls on it, 7 glasses of water for Yin and Yang. I'm like, okay, all right. This is a step up from the all white stuff I've been doing. Interesting, you know, good relationship. But she saw me tell that woman not to come on my page talking to me about African spirituality if you are not a practitioner, and took it as I said white people or non-black people shouldn't practice. And they fired me for that. And I was like, you know, I had to think about that. I had to put on my higher chakra suit and say, okay, what's really going on here? What's really going on here? People, you know, people who are not of African descent are currently dominating religions of African descent in the Americas. They can sell it, they can ship it, they can package it, they can teach it, they can initiate in it. However, because of their power as being higher up on the hierarchical scale, if you say anything that rises against what they believe or what they feel, they have the power to dismiss you. You know, that's what the definition of racism is. Racism, white supremacy, you have in order to be racist, you have to have the power to dismantle or displace a group with less power than you. So me saying something to this woman on my own page made them upset, and they had the power to cut off my coin, even though these are my ancestors who brought the shit here. You know what I mean? So it's important.
I said it's your birthright. It's not theirs.
Right. So I'm just on the tip now, like, okay, I see how it works. I see what y'all doing. All right. Catherine Ironwood talking about, you know, I listened to your grandmothers when y'all didn't, you know, something like that. I'm like, okay, I see how it works. What I have is this is a personal clarion call for all of the black metaphysicians, especially black women in this country, to write your histories of hoodoo, write your histories and your experiences with African spirituality, write stuff that you can pass on to the next generation. We need to regain control over the way our spiritual systems are represented and who has access.
That's right.
Who gets coin from it.
Hello. Yes, because let me say something. First of all, why they all in our ancestors? Because they know we got the power. Now, this is a rumor that I heard. The rumor that I heard is that she was telling her white followers to do readings on us so they can tap into our ancestry and tap into our stuff. But it's like there's always this effort to tap into us and then to push us to the side. Don't care about what's happening to us if we getting killed by police or whatever, and then making the money and then acting like they invented it, taking charge of it and doing all this other stuff. So I say we build our own legitimate bridge, right? And then let everybody else take the fake bridge because it's not going to last. They can't really they don't have no power. We have it. It's our ancestors.
My.
You going to tap into my slave great grandmother and grandfather, you know they gonna whip your white ass. So what are you trying to tap into? What are you trying to tap into? You ain't got nothing to tap into. The only reason you got over is because first we were involved in slavery, then we were so oppressed we couldn't do nothing, and then we had amnesia. But you see all these women coming back? You see all these women coming back? So what do you think you're gonna do? You can't do nothing because the real thing is back. You know? Okay.
You know what? I just want to throw something in there real quick. Here's the thing: if there are white practitioners of traditional African spirituality, it's necessary that they must consult their ancestors, right? I'm just like, you consulting your ancestors will probably, if you're in this country, inevitably trace you back to somebody who beat, murdered, raped, killed, pillaged, and plundered black people. So if you're conjuring up your ancestors, your ancestral work as a white practitioner needs, or at least from my perspective, I don't know what the hell they need to do, but from my perspective, they should be focusing on cleansing the karmic ties that come from all of that shit that the ancestors were doing. You can't do that by, being on top of the world and not acknowledging it, never mentioning what happened in the past, never acknowledging history. Just taking a blind eye.
Right. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No worries. And there are people in our community who are mixed race, who have white ancestry. Lots of people who have ancestors in the past who were white or could be slave owners. And part of the process, and something I learned in this book called Finding Soul on the Path of Orisha, is that the dust needs to be settled if you want a healthy ancestral garden. So you do always want to acknowledge the pain that was in your ancestral lineage due to the racism that happened, and the systems of racism that were perpetuated, whether you're black or white.
Right. I ask myself that from time to time. Not that my focus is never on what Europeans can do outside of usurping our ways of life, but when I think about what they could do to heal themselves, because they need healing too.
Mm-hmm.
We, as a people, as a unit, you can see the healing taking place within our communities. Even if it's small and it's, in pockets, it's happening. And I speak it because I see it happening and I want it to happen. So I'm going to say out loud, our communities are healing. Black people in America, we're rising up, we're getting better, we're stronger, and that's just what it is with us. Europeans as a unit, their birth rate is down, okay? Spiritually speaking, they are bankrupt. They have taken everything and they've tried to use it for their benefit, and it's worked for them for a little while. Because keep in mind, this is the youngest group of two-legged beings who walk on two legs on the planet, and right. They just had a chance to set up a system on the planet, and with the time, they've used their time very unwisely. And so what's happening is changing of the guard, right? You have people who are saying, you know what, we're going to go ahead and take that from you because you have taken your light and hidden it under a bushel basket, to make a church reference or a Bible reference. You haven't done anything good. The time that you've had to rule, the time that you've had to be over people, you haven't cultivated nations. You didn't do like the Moors did. You didn't do like the Africans did when they took their ways of life to Asia, to Europe, to anywhere in the world. Everywhere you went, you carried death and destruction. So first of all, what you could do is atone. You have to give up power because you haven't done anything good with it. Just give it up. Give it up. Give it. Know what to do with it, and take your seat. Take your rightful place, so all of us can take our rightful places. Right? Exactly. It's just, and like you said, they have to go through a process where they have to get a better understanding of the same reality that we have to get a better understanding of, which is white supremacy is real and it's also an illusion. Just go ahead and put it to
illusion.
Put it to the
lay it down, put it to rest, right? Absolutely. And for a population that is 10% of the globe to be having, these big tentacles out there, the other 90% of people of color, it won't take much if the goal is for the illusion of white supremacy to be disintegrated. It won't take much for us to disintegrate it. It first comes from decolonizing our brains and realizing that it is real and not being so unwilling to accept it. And there's a certain amount of militancy you kind of got to have in order to push it forward, push our movement forward, the healing movement, because, yeah, we're being suppressed, and we I don't know if we're going to get off into a little bit of astrology, but I had the benefit of being able to see the astrology chart of the first African slave ship to land in the Americas, and when I look at the chart, I see the story of people whose anger and passion had to be squelched and suppressed. That's in the chart, so a lot of our healing comes from finding the proper ways of expressing our anger and being free to do that.
Yeah. So it's not, now, can I ask,
go ahead.
Based on the chart, my bad, based on the chart, what would those, because you did say that the astrology and its correlation to Black women over the generations, how can we, or what do we need, just go into that. You touched on it just now, but really delve deeper into that chart, what it means for us now, what it's meant for us through the decades, the centuries.
Oh my gosh. The subject matter gets so dope. Like, as an astrologer, you see these little, oh yeah, you're a Gemini, so you talk too much. Girl, yeah, you a Leo, something, very, very surface level interpretations of the signs. And, those are cool. I'm not putting them down, although they can be, they are made to put, keep people in a box. They're descriptive and not prescriptive. When you look at actual whole birth charts, which is basically a graph or a representation of what planets were in the sky at a specific moment in time, you can look at the nature of things. Astrology is the study of the correlation between what's going on in the sky and what's happening on Earth. It's fundamentally based on the principles of as above, so below. What's happening within is happening without, it's happening above, it's happening below, it's happening below, it's happening above. So, we're mirrors to the cosmos in the sky. And so, under that premise, you can look at any moment in history and find the part of the cycle that we're in during that moment of history and, be able to look at other parts of other cycles and find correlations. It becomes it becomes a scientific art, astrology, and intuitive. So, me being an astrologer, me being a Black woman, my specific focus when I do my astrological research is for what the sky looked like during specific times in Black history. What the sky looked like during, the Renaissance, and, the Black Power movement in the 60s and 70s and things like that. And what I found is that looking at where the planet Pluto was in all of these different moments in time shows us a lot about what we need to do in order to heal power imbalance on a personal level and on a global level. So everybody out there has a birth chart. You have a birth chart. You have a birth chart. I got one. Everybody was born. And so at the moment you were born, if you had come out of your mother's womb with a little camera and you took it and pointed it towards the sky and took a picture of where all the planets were, that is the picture of your birth chart. And Pluto was somewhere when you were born. Maybe it was in this part of the sky marked off as Leo. Maybe it's in this part of the sky marked off as Scorpio or Cancer or whatever. And Pluto in astrology represents your inner subconscious drive, your deepest, the deepest part of yourself that compels you, your subconscious, all of the parts of yourself that if you don't spend time looking at, you won't see, Our subconscious is on automatic a lot, so if you don't acknowledge that you have abandonment issues, which is why you keep attracting people who are going to abandon you, then you'll just spend the rest of your life on automatic attracting abandonment issues. But if you're willing to look deeply into the layers of your subconscious and find out the root of what's going on, look at yourself honestly, even though it hurts, and say, okay, this is a problem that I've been perpetuating. I need to change it. You can heal and you can regain power over your own life. And that's what the Pluto process represents. So, like, for example, and you can see it on generational levels. Can we talk about this for a little bit?
Yes.
Please.
A little bit. All right. Okay. So Pluto is the furthest planet out from the sky, right? It's way, 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 way out there. One Earth year is 365 days. It takes Earth 365 days to orbit around the sun. One Pluto year, for however long it takes Pluto to orbit around the sun, is 248 years. It takes this planet a long time to make one rotation around the sun. It won't be back in the beginning of its cycle until 2178, So it moves very slow, which means, it moves through Aries really slow. It moves through Taurus really slow. It moves through Gemini. So there's all of these groups of people that were born when Pluto was in the same sign. So, for example, from 1914, right, to 1938, prime hoodoo time in America, Pluto was in Cancer. Pluto was in the sign of Cancer. Cancer is associated with the mother, the birther, the birth worker, the grandmother, the one who carries tradition down from her womb into the DNA of her children. So, this 1914 to 1938 is the grandmother time. It was, the woman's power was central to the survival of the home. Women had to claim their essential roles that have been placed upon them, in order for the family to survive. There's a lot of grandmothers and grandfathers born during this time. Like my generation's grandmothers and grandfathers were born during the Pluto and Cancer time. Lots of clannishness sticking together because we had to. Cancer is about the family and the tribe, your community, the people who look like you, who have shared histories with you. So, the Great Migration, Black people, we had to get up out of where we were. And what did we do? We all traveled to these different cities together to try and build together. Cancer energy, roots. Cancer is associated with your roots. So, roots music came out like blues and jazz that had, Sankofa calls back to West African music. Grandmama's Hoodoo came out, Zora Neale Hurston is writing all these books. You got, all this patriotism, in the mainstream American society. That's when, white people have Plutos too. So they were, doing all of this, our nation is the great nation thing, right? And Black people were like, yo, my people are the great people. We're dope. Let's go to Harlem and make some of this good music. Mine is yours is mine. Cancer.
Yeah.
Keep in mind,
Marcus Garvey.
That was also the time during that time. That's when a lot of European people started coming into our communities to learn hoodoo, to sit at the feet of our grandmothers, the midwives and the doulas and the birth practices, to take that to their community, and also to start. And in this, debatably, to start the modern pharmaceutical industry based on the herbs that they out from us. So they took our mother wisdom during that time as well and used it for their own benefit of their own communities and families too. But go ahead, keep going. I just wanted to interject that for that time period.
No, that was really good. Absolutely. Specifically birth workers, you'll find that the priestesses were the women who knew how to birth a child, who knew how to help mothers heal. Pluto, the planet of what we need in order to heal ourselves, what we need to focus on, is the mother at that time, the womb. And you're right. The beginning of the modern pharmaceutical industry started. That's when they started separating being birthed at a hospital from the dirty practice of being birthed with a midwife. That's how they were operating out of disorder. Pluto in Cancer tells you heal through the mother. Yet during that time, you separate the child from the mother as the pharmaceutical industry, working out of disorder. That's disorder. But then, you know, that was from 1914 to 1938. And then from the late 30s to the mid 50s, from 1938 to 1957, Pluto skipped over into Leo, right? So that's when the struggle turned into more of like a hear us roar kind of thing. It's expression, art, shameless inhabitation of your body. You know, the the people who eventually became the Panthers were born during this time.
Mm.
You know, they have Pluto and Leo in their charts. How do we heal ourselves? We express ourselves to the deepest layers of our abilities. You know, we express our power. You're going to see our power. Black nationalism became more of a stronghold there. You know, the Panthers came out. There's a lot of this Black African pride, you know, Maulana Karenga, everybody wearing dashikis and getting colorful and being showy. So Malcolm X started to rise to the top of the ranks in the Nation of Islam. You know, the CIA saw all these Pluto and Leo kids being expressive. Even their own white kids were being expressive and doing, you know, acid and all this like fuck the system music. And, you know, they had to try and shut the shit down because all that Leonian energy was too much to take.
Right.
So, go ahead.
No. I was just agreeing. But go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, so that generation was in charge of making sure that we were seen and that we were able to express ourselves in many different ways, especially using art. Leo is the artist, you know. And then Pluto and Virgo from 1957 to 1972. These are the people who eventually came of age in the 80s. You know, Virgo is the energy of purity and making things right, and you know, getting out of the Leonian public eye and going to the background and doing that work. So, you know, a lot of people during that time, something shifted where a lot of people who were working during that time decided to become, you know, they might have been like social activists, but they eventually became like social workers, you know, and decided, okay, they killed all of our top leaders. They killed all of our movements with bullets. So we might have to work this from the inside. So a lot of them started trying to change the system from within. You know, and then, you know, a lot of self-help movements and stuff came out of Pluto and Virgo. And Pluto and Libra, Pluto moved into Libra in 1971 to 1984. Are y'all part of the Pluto and Libra generation?
I am, yes.
Mm-hmm. I was born in 60. You passed me already.
You were born when? When now?
62.
The Virgo? 60, yeah. You're right in the middle of the Virgo.
Oh.
It's about accuracy for you. People got to get this information right. You know, it has to be really, really clear and really good.
Yep.
And actually uplifting, or else you're not messing with it.
Right.
But then the Pluto and Libra generation came about, and, you know, these are, you know, you were born into, like, the disco revolution. There's a lot of disco going on. This is, you know, the big change in society started happening where everybody's looking for a pleasure, you know, the Studio 54 cocaine lifestyle, you know, materialism kind of is on the rise. It's like trust in the stock market is coming back. Lots of Libran things. It's all about get your money and look fresh, be fly, be cute, be the top of the game. But for Black people, hip hop was born. You know what I mean? All these really, really unique art forms were born. Libra is about symmetry and balance and being on equal terms with each other. Hip hop was born out of, you know, some gang violence, you know, things starting to get violent and kids needing an outlet where they can still be competitive but still be on equal terms and nobody loses their life. You know what I mean? Libra is about symmetry. That's when rhyming started coming out. Everybody got these styles and everybody's making these rhymes and creating this new art. That's even when the drag queen ball culture of New York started popping, you know, all these designer clothing and all this Libra shiny shit happened and, you know, looking good, smelling good.
Bogus.
Vogan, right. It's very Libra. It's very, very Venusian in essence, I guess. But that generation is responsible for carrying a certain balance and a commitment to artwork being the revolution. And then right after that, I'm going to stop talking about this in a little bit because it's so much, and I'm just nerding out. I'm such a nerd.
I love it.
You have all the, no time limit. Keep going, because this is information that we all hear, and this is not accessible everywhere. People are not, you are the only person I've ever heard discuss our healing from an astrological perspective with planet Pluto, the eras that it came through, the signs it's been in, all these different decades. So no, take your time, get it all out, because people are going to have to get a pen and a paper so they can understand what's going on, and then go back to the beginning and study astrology so they can know how to chart our goals and what we need to do to plan it in the next decades to come. So take your time.
Yes. Oh, for sure. But that's a good point. Astrology, you can look into the future and see what's coming. You can look into the future and see what energies are necessary for the advancement and healing of yourself and the manifestation of your release. So it's a powerful, powerful tool. JP Morgan, I believe it was, he said, millionaires don't use astrology. Billionaires use astrology. And that makes sense. That's how they know how to plan on the next generations and what they're going to be like and what systems they need to implement to suppress or keep them in a certain way of thinking and being. But anyway, so the next generation to come about was Pluto in Scorpio, right? And that was from 1983 until about 1994, so 11 years. And I don't know if you've noticed, but from Pluto in Cancer, like Pluto spent something like 24 years in Cancer, and then in Leo it's been 19 years moving through Cancer, and then Virgo 15, and then Libra 13, and then Scorpio 11, just 11 years in in Scorpio. So the way Pluto moves is that, sometimes it'll be in a sign shorter because of the long oval shape of its orbit. Right. So when it came to Scorpio, Pluto in Scorpio, Pluto is said to rule Scorpio, right? So it's the planet that's associated with helping us express our scorpionic energies. But really what that meant was, for my generation, I'm a Pluto and Scorpio baby. So from 1983 to 1984, that 11 years of people are what I consider my generation. And 83, think about what was going on in the Black community from the 80s and the early 90s. People in my generation were born into chaos. Right. Yep. When we were born, the AIDS epidemic was at a peak. Crack was at a peak. They had successfully, pushed crack into the next generation. People are rioting. People are angsty. There's all this gang energy. People are trying to protect themselves. There's police brutality up the ass. Even the white kids are doing grunge and punk rock and all this really, angsty type of stuff. So, that was in the air we breathed and the water we drank and the media we consumed. And that, is essentially what we needed. Everything that we went through, any of these generations is what we needed to heal. And what my generation needed in Scorpio was to be able to go to the very, very depths of the problems. Pluto is very comfortable in Scorpio. Pluto is about, looking into the subconscious, and Scorpio is like, yeah, I like that. So a lot of us, you'll find in our generation, are very into the hidden aspects of things. We're going undercover, and a lot of us are, like for me, for example, I got into this metaphysical stuff really young. People are always like, I wish I would have got in when I was that young. I was like, it was a compulsion. This is a compelling force that I had no control over. So, I grew up on that end, and I was in LA. Crack epidemic all over the place. I saw the pain, the direct pain for me and my peers growing up with family members and mothers and fathers on crack. You know, I see some of my peers grow up and become pimps and hoes and prostitutes and things. You know, I saw a lot of my peers succumb to serious drug use, you know, from an early age. You know, so we were very, very exposed, our generation, to these types of things, and very, very interested in the topics of like sex, death, rebirth, regeneration, the occult. And it's kind of my generation's point, to go deep and uncover the hidden gems, because there's no reason to go all the way to rock bottom and be in the midst of all of this dark energy if you're not going to go in the mine and get the jewel. And to me, that's kind of, the jewel is Africa. You know, the jewel is the Africa in all of the things that we know as African people. And,
right.
You know, that's that healing and regeneration thing. We got to look at our subconsciouses and see, where have we adopted white supremacist beliefs and ways of thinking?
Yeah.
You know, where has our family adopted it? Where has society adopted it? And what can we do to kill it right now? Scorpio doesn't play. It's done. You know? So we're all experiencing, you know, I was just born in Pluto and Scorpio, but you were coming of age, Rich. You know, you were coming of age, and you were, you know, probably in your 20s, you know. So it's all of our responsibility. We all go through these phases and these cycles, but being aware of the cycles and how important they are is key.
Oh, if you don't mind me asking.
Mm-hmm.
How old are you, Daisy?
I turned 25 on October 23rd last year.
You see
What?
so much older.
What you mean by that?
No, I mean, like, when...
I'm going to be 30
What'd you say?
on my birthday. Huh?
I'm trying to calculate your age because you sound like a 40-year-old. Reese's like that, too. I call her an old woman. But you sound like you're, like, much older, much, like you more mature. You know, you just seem, you don't look older, but you sound like it. You know, you sound...
Your face does not match the level. Like, when I look at you, I see a very young person because of how you look. You look 17. So when I see you in pictures, I'm like, oh my gosh, why does she look so young? Like, she got to be close to my age. Like, no, she's like 8. And so I'm looking, so it just blows my mind that at 25 you have the wisdom of a woman twice your age and the knowledge of a woman twice your age, and it's very, very beautiful to my heart to see. It's like I just have so much hope for these sisters now, because just the younger and younger we get, like I get into like the root of these babies, and you're not a baby, I don't mean to call you that, but it's like, it just makes my heart so glad. But I will be 30.
I am a baby. It's okay.
It's okay. I'm getting up there, but go ahead. I want to hear more of what you're saying. Pluto and Scorpio.
Well, I'm humbled. I'm just humbled. Thank you. Thank you so much for your beautiful words. You know, I admire y'all sisters so much for doing what you're doing. So, you know, for me to be this young, and be able to have these conversations with you and to communicate, you know, as if we were born in the same exact generation, as if we're peers. It's healing. It's really, 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 really dope. And I appreciate y'all being able to rock with me this way. I'm over here blushing. I'm blushing, I admit.
Oh.
And, you know, I am a baby. I'm going to be my ancestors' baby until I'm up out of here, you know. So I'm always, as much as I know it from sitting at the feet of elders and from initiating and being motivated to learn these things and you know, taking the responsibility to learn these things. So, you know, and I wouldn't know any of this if any information wasn't left to me. You know, if the information wasn't made available to me through my ancestors and through the elders that have left their legacies and, dedicated their whole entire lives to leaving this information. So I'm just starting early. I learned from them. I see how important it is to leave things behind, so I'm just starting the process.
Yes.
But, the next generation, there is a lot of us who, like I said, we got Pluto and Scorpio, so we have an inclination to, when we want to go deep into things, to look into the things that were hidden from us. So I'm taking the torch, I'm picking up the baton from previous generations that were like, all right, the first generation was like, okay, we can't let them see we doing nothing. We have to code everything. They can't see us with no drum. They can't see us with no dance. They can't see us with no roots, no nothing. And then, it developed, and then we're like, okay, we have a new movement, 70s, 80s, everybody, let's go back to Africa and initiate and Sifa and things like that. We may not celebrate it or be all loud about it in here, but, this is what we're going to do for our own spiritual self. And then I feel what I'm seeing from my generation is we are ready to be unapologetic for everybody. We have the power to kind of carry that unapologetic movement. And, young Black people are the people creating culture in this country. Or let me not say creating culture. We're the people that are creating pop culture. We are at the forefront of pop culture. We create the trends that everybody follows. It wasn't in the 80s. White people weren't saying hip hop phrases and shit. Now everybody talking about Bay and everybody doing the name that our culture. They pick it up. They pick it up and they like it. It's always been that way, but nowadays it's like we are mainstream now. You don't got to be going into the speakeasies to listen to some Black music now. You turn on the radio and you're listening to Black people or white people singing like Black people. So our generation creates the tone, and what I'm feeling is that it's important for African spirituality to be African thought, African ways of living and thinking about yourself in relation to spirit needs to be at the forefront of what all young Black people are thinking about nowadays.
Yes.
So, we just have to be reminded of how dope it is. And we're getting it. The dashiki revolution, everybody got to be shiki now. Everybody got locks now. It's cool to have an afro now. When I was 12, just, about 13 years ago, if you had an afro, you were still looked at as dirty. Nowadays it's the cute shit, it's the dope thing. And that's really cool. I'm seeing lots of change happen through this generation. And I'm expecting it into the future too.
Right.
That's our power.
Do you have any warnings or any suggestions? Like in the military, we had there was a book of like rules, and it was like warnings, suggestions, and notes or something like that, where it was like recommendations, like prescriptions. Do you have any, based on what you've seen in the chart, any prescriptions for what we can be doing collectively right in our own community? Where can we start? Because my philosophy is stop thinking in terms of saving the world and think about saving your block. Like, do you even know the names of, do you know who lives across the street? Who are the Arabs and the Chinese and the Koreans who run all the commerce in your neighborhood? Do you know them? Are they giving your people jobs in the neighborhood? Do you have a plan to get the economy under control? Like, can you funnel anything back into the development of programs for your youth? Because, you can't necessarily, use that money to fix your buildings, but you can use that money to fix the minds of the people who live right where you live. So it's like, what recommendations do you have based on the chart for, what we can do as a people within our own communities?
Absolutely. Well, first off, I want to say I think it's super cute that the person with Pluto and Libra is like, do you know your neighbors? You know, because Libra is about the people who are a reflection of you and the people who are, you know, in your community that you have the ability to create a network with, you know, and create connections to and meet. She's like, do you actually face-to-face meet these people? Do you know who they are in your in your community? I think that's powerful, you know, and I think that's a beautiful initiative, Save the Block. That's you manifesting your you know, your in your chart. The purpose that you're here to do is reconnect face-to-face people, and have people healing, you know, the community on a one-by-one personable level.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of what we need to do, that takes it back to the chart that I was telling you about, that this elder Vernon Robinson, who gave me this chart, was talking about. I met him at this astrology retreat. It was a 3-day retreat. Me and him were the only Black people there, and he took it upon himself to lay this info on me. You know, it was a powerful moment of ancestral transmission, you know, even through these astrological way. But for our generation, our people in the Americas, the first slave ship that got here, it happened in Virgo season, right? So if we look at the moment the boat arrived at the shore, which this man calculated, if we had taken a picture of the sky, the sun would have been in Virgo, and this, you know, it would have had a birth chart. And the birth chart, you can think of it kind of like a person, right? You know, it's a person, an entity, an energy, a snapshot of energy, and we were a Virgo. You know what I mean? Our struggle is a Virgo struggle. And Virgo energy is about perfecting the self. You know, Virgo energy is about getting from a place of lead to a place of gold. You know, it's about the alchemy and the work ethic that needs to happen from that. Now, in the chart, the Pluto of that chart was in Taurus, the earthy physical sign of Taurus. So during a time where our healing comes from being in touch with our physical bodies were literally being usurped and used for things other than what we naturally wanted to do. So in healing that, Taurus energy is about reconnecting with the body. You know, it's very, very, we got to start on a very, 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 very simple level. Energetically, transgenerationally, we have been taught that our bodies are not for us. You know, you want to sit down and breastfeed your baby? Nah, you better get up. You better get up and you know, shuck some of that corn, or do whatever the work is that you have to do. No questions asked. You know, years and years and years and years of our people not being able to do what we want with our bodies. That is why we dance so hard. That is why all African dances are medicinal, you know, to our bodies. We shake off the stress and the strain and the suppression, and that is a metaphysical process. So what Black people need to do in terms of the astrological chart of the first slave ship here is reclaim our bodies. Reclaim our bodies. And I mean literally from dancing more, being comfortable dancing, you know, reestablishing dance in our communities. We never left it. Every generation got a new dance going on. But taking care of, you know, realizing that it's our birthright and it's necessary for our health, taking on that initiative, taking care of our physical health, getting our practices in order, you know, do your yoga, do your breathing, do your meditation, eat your good food. There's a reason why all of those things have been separated so far from us and have been thrown into white New Age metaphysics. You know, they do yoga. We don't do yoga. They eat this. We don't eat this. They can afford organics. We can't afford organics. You know, we have to start picking up those initiatives to give our body the nourishment physically and metaphysically it needs in order for us to do any kind of work on the block or on the motherfucking continent. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's a really powerful thing that came across in the chart. Another thing that came across in the chart, our warrior instinct. Our warrior planet, Mars, the planet Mars, was in Scorpio when the first slave ship landed here. And, you know, that's more Scorpio energy there. We need to be able to express our warriorhood in powerful ways. That's been suppressed. Of course that's been suppressed. You know, us healing our bodies is about being able to actively express. You know, you're in a room in a board meeting and, you know, somebody makes a black joke and you got to sit there and squeeze your asshole, squeeze your legs together, put your smile on, put a tight smile on. You can't do nothing. And then you go home and take it out on your family.
Right.
What would happen if it looked like black people speaking up for ourselves and speaking the truth when the truth needed to be spoken?
Right.
Our bodies would heal. Our bodies would heal. We would reclaim our power. People would be more aware of what power actually is. You know, there's a lot of racist people walking around thinking that they are, what's the word? Impenetrable.
Yeah, yep.
You know what I mean? But they can get got just like anybody else. And I'm not saying we got to go around getting everybody. I'm just saying our expression of our anger and our passions must be let off of the bridle. You know, we must be take the saddle off for a minute so that we can be free. And those are like the two fundamental things that we can do right now to get us moving in the right direction.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you this. When you tell me to take my passion off the bridle, what I envision in my mind is not, it's violent. It's very, bloody. It's not peaceful at all. It's total opposite of anything that they tell you Martin Luther King Jr. stood for. And shout out to the ancestor. Today is his birthday.
I say shout out to the ancestor.
So what kinds of resistance are we talking about here? Because I'm not not like taking it laying down. That's not what I'm about. And I hate that so many of our people have adopted that mindset, and it's just become so, you know, we can't express ourselves. We can't be angry. We have to hold, like you said, just everything about holding it in, the rise of cancer, heart disease. Like, what is the heart? You know, it's pumping the blood. It's the seat of your intellect. So it goes against everything in my body to deny myself the freedom to express that anger. Like, you're not going to tell me that I just have to be peace and love all the time. Like, you out here killing us in these streets. Yeah, we killing ourselves, but y'all killing yourselves too. You out here killing us in these streets. You just want me to not, like, how, forgive Dylan Roof? Like, what? But, it's, you know, so it's like, what? How does that resistance look? I mean, to you, what's your suggestion or your ideas of what that kind of resistance looks like? Because we could just ignore them and do our thing, and that could be our resistance. That would make me eat. That would probably satisfy me more than to see blood in the streets. I would rather see us off the streets and let that be how it is, you know? So,
first off, really? You know, you tapped into the emotional undertone, you know, of what's going on. I know a lot of people are going to have a lot of resistance to hearing a lot of the things we talked about today, but, you know, what you just said, that's the piece right there, you know, that is the piece. What do we do in terms of that anger, you know, that Mars and Scorpio we have? Well, that Mars and Scorpio is in a very spiritual place. So really the most important thing that we can do is cultivate ourselves spiritually. And, you know, like I say this a lot, you know, Olodumare made Ogun too. You
right,
know,
exactly.
Our, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Our spiritual systems leave room for anger and expression. And he made Oya too. You know, we leave space for the expression of our fire. That is not strange, you know, in African culture. Two people can get into an argument and it can sound like it's kick down, drag out, but really it's just them, you know, having a fiery conversation, and don't nobody gotta die at the end of it. You know what I mean? But since we are in this extra superlatively violent culture, we do have to understand a certain amount of self-defense. So Mars being part of, you know, what we need to do to heal, Mars is about that military science, which I won't talk too much about here because we need, like you said, to go into our own communities and teach these things and not, you know, we need in private. Mars and Scorpio is a very, very kind of secretly dangerous energy. So we do need to have our ability to physically defend ourselves. We need to regain our bodies and control of our bodies. Now, what can you do to release the stress? You know, all the things you see on TV. First of all, you need to detach from as much as the system as you possibly can, financially, emotionally, entertainment-wise. You know, all areas of people activity, like Francis Cress Weldon has talked about. Education, decolonize. Entertainment, decolonize. Economics, decolonize. Labor, decolonize. Law, decolonize. Sex, war, religion, politics, decolonize as much as possible. Which means, you know, if it wasn't created by your people, then you may want to give it a second look before you decide to sign your name on the dotted line. And then that'll take away a lot of the anger provoking things, you know, especially that media, especially the news. You want to save your blood pressure, that problem. And then focus on how awesome Black people are, you know, how amazing we are, how many amazing ways of thinking we've created. We created thinking, you know, we created systems of thought. We created ways of organizing our thoughts to bring life to everything around us. African thought is life and death respecting. You know, we create life-bringing technologies. We keep them going. We like children. We make children. You know what I mean? We don't kill our brothers. We don't have an obsession with violence inherently. So a lot of our fire can be transformed into, you know, powerful dance, powerful works of art, especially reach your generation. You know, the Pluto and Virgo generation can do a lot of work to create systems of this. So y'all are the people who are setting up community centers and, you know, new schools and new you know, places to honor the ancestors, and then y'all creating the structure. Libra's creating the art. You know, it's really just about tapping into what your specific energy is and allowing that to help you build healthy structure for Black community. So yeah, don't get, you know, it gets angersome, and I would never tell a Black person not to be angry at racism. However, you know, there are certain ways, there are certain things we can do to not be always popping off at white people or not always all up in their business, and be spending that fuel, that fire that we're burning on creating systems of life and protection of life for African people.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
That makes sense.
Yep. Like, yeah, I think, well, I'm a Scorpio rising, so a lot of that that's in me. It's nothing I can do about it. And as in, it's gonna be. I have learned to control it in a lot of ways. I had to learn to bring it out because I grew up very suppressed. You know, allowed to express my fire or having a very difficult time expressing my fire to the people around me. And so as I got older, it kind of went, I lost control of it. And now I'm kind of, now that I'm maturing and I know I'm aware of the power of it. It's not as, it doesn't overpower me. So, it's this whole breakdown, this astrological breakdown of our healing, not our suffering, not our pain, but how we heal from it is very important. And I really hope everybody listening really has their pens and paper out and they're prepared to go to work because we have a lot of work.
Yes.
Daisy, I did not know that you were a certified hypnotherapist.
Yes, ma'am.
That is crazy. So you past life regressions?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. I do past life regressions, and that's a really powerful way to get in touch with what you've been through and your repeating patterns in this lifetime.
Yeah. Now, are you a Leo? What's your sign?
What'd you say now?
What's your sign? When's your birthday?
I'm a Libra. I was born on the last day of Libra before entering into Scorpio. But a lot of people think I'm a Leo, though. A lot of people ask me if I'm a Leo specifically, and I'm like, oh, I love Leos. I love Leos, but I'm not as brave. I'm not as brave as Leo yet.
Is there any planet or do you have any planets in Leo?
No, in fact, the only planet I do have one. I have an asteroid because they count the asteroids in astrology too. I have an asteroid in Leo, and it's the asteroid named Chiron, and Chiron is the wounded part of yourself. So I actually have a lot of wounds around the Leo energy inside of me and being able to express that Leo energy. So. So no.
So like, if I were, because I'm not a person who is a master of astrology, like by any stretch of the imagination, but if I were gonna like put any type of interpretation on that, it would be that there might be a lot of things that you have mastered in terms of your wounds or overcome in terms of your wounds, and there's a bravery that is there that you might not be acknowledging that keeps you from succumbing to those wounds, from being a victim of those wounds. Because there's nothing about that says victim. Everything says you looking at a goddess, you looking at a goddess walking. So, it's just that's how I would.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I was going to. Yeah, absolutely. I gave it. So,
really love my clients. I really love working with the sisters who want to know. So things end up usually going way longer than an hour, and we try to get through everything that this person marks as a priority. As far as whether they want to learn crystal healing, ritual crafting, astrology from an African perspective. There's intuitive development, psychic development, and divination, tarot cards, So it was a special that I was running. But I mean, you still with one class can get a lot done. I have syllabuses and worksheets and homework, and it's pretty legit. I've spent a lot of time hearing people's requests of me because it started because people were asking me what everything I knew, and you'd be like, can you tell me everything you know in one Facebook message? And I was like, I want to share everything. I want to share all of myself with you. I want to share everything I've learned because I know that it's important. And I also know that time is important. And I also know in the current society that we're living in right now, I got to be able to afford food because I can sit up in somebody else's house, eating somebody else's food, talking to you for 3 hours, or we can have an energy exchange. And I can be able to feed myself and, you feed yourself with the knowledge and then we can go home balanced and on equal terms, especially since in African culture, shamans and priestesses are taken care of, period. People know of the value that these people have as healers and are willing to bring them food and, help them build house and bring clothes and stuff like that. So that's just the energy exchange, But that's the Sankofa Spirit School, which is for Black witches. You don't have to identify as a Black witch, but if you're a person of color interested in learning old ways of old ways of metaphysical practices, that's a good place to start. I do a lot of referencing books, a lot of referencing other elders that I know. And, if any of you ladies have services, I recommend services and other products and stuff from other Black-owned companies. So I'm always, it's part of the work. It's part of connecting all these Black people to one mission, the mission being to bring Africa back in us or to go back to Africa if that's what we want to do. If you want to check out any of the things I'm doing, any of the blogs I write, or the shop that I run, where I sell crystals and stuff, you can check out the astromystic.com. That'll take you to my main website. Now, if you want to check out the shop on its own, there's a link up there that says shop that you can click, or if you want to go straight to the shop, you can go to theastromystic.black. I chose that domain because I'm trying to create a collective of Black businesses using the .black instead of .com so that we know who we're buying from. Oh. Yes, child. And if you look up the domains, .black domains are like $2. I hope nobody hears this and changes that, but domains are like $2, for a year. So get that .black. Even if you have ninemindsradio.com, get ninemindsradio.black as well. But yes, the astromystic.com or the astromystic.black. The services I offer are sessions of the Sankofa Spirit School. We have 1 hour sessions or, you can get 4 1-hour sessions or 8 1-hour sessions if you really, really want to go into a certain subject matter. The topics that we can discover or kind of go deeper into are astrology, if you want to learn astrology from the African perspective, tarot from a Black perspective, psychic development, if you're looking to open up them higher chakras we were talking about, crystals, and ritual crafting. If you want to know how to get the fundamentals and basics on how to create your own rituals for anything you need, Sankofa Spirit School. I also offer direct one-on-one tarot readings, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And the 15-minute reading is something like $20. It's not too much if you just need some confirmation for what the ancestors are probably trying to tell you that you may not be hearing, because that's really all that ever happens. It's the ancestors talking. I also offer astrology readings. If you want a full natal chart reading, they're usually about 2 hours, and everything we talked about in these other charts, we go directly into your chart and talk about the different aspects of yourself and what needs to be brought forth and manifested and what needs to be left behind and how. Can I do a few shout-outs? Oh, yeah. Yeah. All right. I want to do a shout-out. If you're a Black woman interested in tarot, there's a woman who has made history by making the first all-Black female-created group-funded tarot deck. It's called Dust to Onyx, And she's an artist. The Courtney Alexander, the artist, is fucking amazing. Go to dust2onyx.com and you'll see her artwork in the cards she's created. She made history there, and they're really, really beautiful. So I'm working with her in a certain way on the decks before they're released. So it's just check it out. It's really, really, really worth checking out. Also, big ups to two of my mentors who you had featured on this show. Actually, they go by Ifa Shayo. I love Ifa Shayo so much.
Yep.
So much.
Now in the whole world, like her whole spirit and flavor, like not ahead of you, Mama. My daughter's bugging out, but yeah, I'm crazy about Ifa Shayo. But go ahead.
Mm-hmm. First things first, she the realist. She's absolutely the real realist. The real realist. And, she's doing a bone divination class that I'm going to be taking soon. So bless up to her. She's a beautiful, beautiful woman with a powerful message. And also Elizabeth Ruth, a.k.a. Big Liz, bless her up. She holding it down by being the first wide-scale Black-owned hoodoo business, kind of taking matters back into our own hands and creating a new legacy based off of the old legacy. And I love her for that, and I appreciate her for, being what she is and sharing what she does and having them high-quality products. Have you smelled any of her, herbs and oils and stuff?
No.
I am. I really plan on it.
They're really high quality. I don't know what she do, how she do it, but it's not that fake, hoodoo oil that you get from any of these other little companies with the dye and the blue 47 in it or whatever. She has real nature products, and I love them. Yeah. So that's my little shout out piece.
Thank you so much for being here with us. That I didn't expect a Black history, astrological rundown like that. That blew my mind. Deep. That was so deep. Thank you so much for coming. I love your website, and I love all your projects that you're doing and everything like that. And you really blessed us today. You really did, and we appreciate it. We appreciate having you here. We do.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciated being here. I'm eternally grateful to you, sisters. If there's anything you need from me, just let me know.
Okay, we will. Yeah. We gonna call you.
Nice.
All right, baby. Have a good night. Much love.
Same to you. And, congratulations on the documentary you're coming out with. I'm going to be looking forward to the Facebook Live video about what that's all about, right?
Yes, that's coming up soon. I'm going to do a live probably tomorrow. I don't know people's face, so I don't be wanting to, say a bunch of stuff all the time. I just don't. I just don't want to be out there all the time because people be like, yo, she always going live. Even though I only been live twice, so I'm bugging.
Hey, people love when you go live.
But I'm going to do
people
it.
People love when you go live.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to do it because I got to give an update on the documentary anyway because the site's been we've been fundraising, so it's not at a total standstill, but I know I need to promote more so I got to get this 5 stacks before the end of March because I really want to start filming in March. That's my ideal time to start filming. I want to have enough footage and enough interviews in so when Daughters of the Moon comes around, I can that'll be my time to go into rap, So
yes. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. Yep, we gonna work it out.
And I'll see y'all at the Black Witch Convention.
That's right.
You will.
Yeah. Okay.
Try to make the dress for the ball or if I'm going to buy the dress for the ball, but I can't sew like that, so I'm probably going to buy it. I got it. I'm ambitious though, because I will make something. Like, I'll make some pants and wear them, and they'll get a hole that day, and I did it.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be mad. I wouldn't be mad at all. But it's going to be flight. I'm excited. It's happening on my birthday weekend, so I'm trying to come through fresh, too. Can't wait to meet y'all.
Oh.
That's so dope. You flying over, right?
Yeah, I'll be flying over from LA. I'm trying to do lots of amazing Black Witch things around that date. So, if you're hearing about anything, keep me posted.
Yes, ma'am. And there's this dope ass vegan restaurant I can't wait to get to. In Delaware, not far from Maryland at all, called Drop Squad Kitchen, and that's the first place I'm going to when I get there. We're gonna leave the Delaware to Drop Squad Kitchen because I gotta get that black bean burger. And I'm just excited for that whole time, that whole 3 days. It's gonna be phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
So nice.
If anybody's, and I'm not editing this part out, Black Witch Convention, Daughters of the Moon Black Witch Convention. If you don't have anything to do October 20th to October 22nd, you need to be there. And if you do have something to do, you need to find somebody to watch the babies and a replacement for work and all of that, because you have to be there. The energy is going to be out of this world. The sessions going on, the classes, the rituals, the work, everything is going to be amazing, from the instructors to the attendees. So make your way. Like, make your plans now to be there. So,
yeah,
that's all I got. And y'all go to Daisy's website and order her stones. Stop going to these white metaphysical stores to get stones. Go straight to her shop, get your stones, get your tarot readings, get your relationship readings. Like, for our
yeah, come through. Let's fix you up. Let's get on the right foot.
Right.